Hello, I'm Mark Schoen, and my guest is Sharon Liese. Did I pronounce it correctly?
You did. You did. Thank
And
you.
could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. I just recently directed and produced the film Transhood, and and then I've been doing documentaries for about 15 years, and somehow very interested in doing documentaries about kids and kind of coming of age stories. So this sort of fit into my wheelhouse doing this documentary.
Well, I must say I enjoyed your film, Transhood, and in fact, I do have a confession. I watched it twice.
Oh,
And
well, thank you. I
so
appreciate it.
my first question is, what was your motivation to produce this film?
Well, like I just said, I'm so fascinated, interested, passionate about coming of age stories, and also telling stories over time. And I found out about this, the Transgender Institute in Kansas City, where I live, from my husband, who's an attorney, has nothing to do with filmmaking. And he told me about it, and I said, that's really fascinating and wonderful that we have that kind of resource in Kansas City. So I wanted to learn more about it, and when I learned more about it, I was invited to go to some of the support groups and met some of the families, and I just fell in love with these kids and just felt like their stories really needed to be told. And this was 6 years ago, so it was a very different climate then, and people really didn't even know, like, someone next door who was transgender. So the stories were so new, and I wanted those voices to be heard.
And how did you come up with this concept, this 5-year plan, which to me was fascinating?
Well, it kind of grew over time, but I knew at the outset that I didn't want to do sort of this, flash in the pan, sort of go in and just do a portrait of transgender youth. And and as I was filming, it became more and more apparent that that letting these stories sort of breathe and letting these kids grow up before our eyes was going to be something that would be much more meaningful for audiences, because they could just kind of took away the sensationalism of it, and just sort of like, these are kids growing up in the Midwest who happen to be transgender.
How difficult was it to find this cast, these 4 young people?
Um, yeah. Well, I think that the finding them might not have been as difficult as the, now that I look back, that they stayed with it for 5 years. Um, but I had one person in particular, Debbie, who's Avery's mom, who kind of knows everybody in the community, and so she really helped me to locate people who might be interested.
She was amazing.
I know. And she taught me so much along the way, and helped so much in, introducing me to families and helping me to understand what was really going on. And so when I interviewed people, there were definitely a lot of people who didn't want it, a lot of families that didn't want to do it. But then the families that did want to do it, I actually started filming with 5 families, and 1 family dropped out, and then that was it. The 4 families.
Why did they drop out?
I think it was a lot of, it was just a lot of pressure, and it takes a lot of, it takes a lot of time commitment, and just and trust and courage to just say, and it's not that they didn't have courage, but it takes a lot to let your story be told, because as you can see with the families, it's not just about the kids, it's about the parents and all the missteps, as they would call them, that they took. So, and they made themselves very vulnerable, and not everybody's up for doing that.
Yeah. What was really interesting was how supportive these parents were, these four sets of parents. And what did you encounter any children whose parents were not supportive during your production?
Yes, yeah. And that was difficult because that was actually, I kept thinking that we needed to add that to the film. And and did meet some kids who but they were under 18, and I couldn't film with them unless their parents would agree to it. And of course their parents wouldn't agree to it because they weren't supportive of the process.
Well, I think there's lots of examples out in public of how parents are not supportive. So I was pleased to see such supportive families. I mean, I thought these parents could be a role model for other families who have transgender children.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that. And I think that as we've been going on the festival circuit, that's what we've been hearing. And a lot of parents are so appreciative that these particular parents, let their process and their journey be out there for other people to see. So, it's okay to not get it right, even though we don't even know what get it right even means, because it's all new territory for these parents, and they
yeah.
didn't anticipate it.
And I think getting it right is individual.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely what I wanted to show in the film, is that every journey is different, and what is right for one kid and one family is it could be very different for another family.
So over this 5-year period, did you have any difficulties shooting?
I'm sure I did. Yeah, I mean, there definitely are always those times when families either are too upset about something that they don't want to film, and they might want to film a little bit later. And as a verite filmmaker, you always want to get the moment. But I'll say that 90% of the time the families were open to it, and I had to always respect when they weren't. And then I think working with adolescents is and young people sometimes has its challenges, because they might not be in the mood for filming, even though you've shown up with a crew and kind of been talking about this for weeks, and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know this was today," So there are those kind of kiddo challenges.
Yes, yes. So in general, how did you get along with the cast?
Oh, you become very close to a cast like this. At least I did, and I don't think that you can get that kind of vulnerability if they can't trust you and have a relationship with you. So I mean, I care about each and every one of them, and I'm in touch with them, and know way more about their lives than we had time for in the film. And I think it becomes very collaborative and kind of family like when you're embedded for 5 years with families and telling their stories.
All right. Well, I'd like to talk about each of the children,
Sure.
and I'd like to do it by age. So I'd like to start with Phoenix.
Okay.
So the first thing I saw was how supportive Phoenix's mom and dad, I believe his name was Zach,
Mm-hmm.
and Molly,
Mm-hmm.
and they were, to have a 4-year-old and letting this 4-year-old be herself was just incredible. So could you tell me a little bit about how you felt about encountering Phoenix for the first time?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because I talked to Debbie, Avery's mom, about that I really wanted to add, because I think at that point we were following 3 families, and I wanted to, it was very early on, and I wanted to, I said, do you know any families that have a kid who is gender expansive, gender fluid, because that's really a journey and experience that would really enhance the film. And then she introduced me to them. And I was very impressed with how affirming they were of, of Phoenix's journey. So when I first, and I had never met a kid that was, said, I'm a girl boy. And so that was very, there was a lot to learn and a lot to take in there. And, I thought it was amazing how they were parenting Phoenix.
Yeah. What to me, I agree with you. And to be so supportive, no matter where she went, or that was amazing, especially when there was a gender change, sort of. Were you surprised at that?
I kind of was, I more was looking at it like, what is, I don't know if you're talking about toward the end.
I am talking.
Yeah, that I was, I wasn't as, I probably was surprised at the moment that I learned that, but I was probably more surprised at Molly's reaction than anything else. And that, kind of came over time, but it wasn't, it in a way felt like a very abrupt 180.
What surprised you about Molly's reaction?
That she was once very kind of embracing of the idea of gender fluidity and gender expansiveness, and then once Phoenix desisted, then I think, and then she kind of, all the things that she had believed, she called into question, and that was surprising to me.
But she remained supportive.
Yeah, I would say she's supportive. And I think that there are, I've heard people who've seen the film and, that they wonder if it's, if that supportive goes as far as being affirming, so I do think that there's a distinction there.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt she loves Phoenix and loves her kids. But there's a difference in how Zach and Molly address the issue, and where they. I think that it seems that Zach maybe at this point is more willing to follow where Phoenix will lead, and Molly might, because of her beliefs now, might be more hesitant to follow if there was if Phoenix started, experiencing or expressing a different direction.
This makes me think about a saying from Oscar Wilde. You got to be yourself because everyone else is taken.
Yeah.
And I that Phoenix made me think of that.
Yeah.
So, all right, can we move on to Avery?
Yes, for sure.
So, first of all, Avery's mom, I thought was great, and some of the things that Avery said to me were just amazing. And I must confess, I saw Avery on the cover of National Geographic before I saw this film. And what surprised me, well, some of the things that Avery said, that stick in my mind, like, I'm just your average, normal transgender girl. It says it at age 7. Did that shock you? Because
Yeah, it wasn't shocking in this in a sense, but it was very eye-opening for me, for both Avery being 7 and knowing that that she knew she was a girl at 4, the same as Phoenix. And so as I was on this journey of making this film, I was learning that when I met these kids at such a young age that were so, they knew, and they were so certain. It was kind of reassuring to me, because I didn't know how, until I met them and talked to them and, was face to face, I didn't know that was, I probably was like other cisgender, people saying, how do they know at such an early age? And that's been the question. And after having done this film and meeting these kids, I'm like, they know. And you can just see that they know.
But knowing and being so self-accepting was so refreshing. I mean, I heard of a case where an 85-year-old man was in the closet all his life and sought out surgery at age 85. And when the surgeon questioned him, he said she wanted to get a vaginoplasty. He said, I want to die my authentic self. And then to see Avery at age 7 being her authentic self, it was so refreshing to see that.
Yeah. And I think that, like you mentioned, the parents being so supportive, it was, I was concerned at the beginning, like, oh, this is not reality. This is not what all the kids go through. And that's true, that there are a lot of trans kids who do not have such supportive parents. But I think it was important for people to see that right in the Midwest, in Kansas City, the heart of America, there are people who are accepting and affirming.
Yes.
You can learn a lot from that.
So, yeah, it was, well, the other thing that Avery said that amazed me was when the mom suggested she be in a parade.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't want to go to the parade. I don't want to die. So here she was, self-accepting, but knowing that she could be in danger.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing that's sort of haunting and horrible about their journeys, is that there are these people that just hate and do not accept. And these kids at such a young age have to learn about that. Yes. They have these accepting families, and so in their bubble things are good, and that's great for them, but there's this larger context and environment that unfortunately cannot be expected to be that affirming and supportive.
When Avery was on National Geographic, he got a lot of public attention, and then she wrote that little book. And it showed in the film, she didn't want the public attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she said something like, I want to be myself, but I don't want to be on display. How did you feel hearing that and filming her?
It was, I mean, it's definitely something I thought of, a lot. And I learned about, I learned the term media regret, and that's what Avery's journey really, teaches us. And Debbie speaks a lot about to parents that don't, just because your kid says, "Hey, I'm out and proud, and I want to tell everybody, and I want to tell my story," that you really need to be careful when you decide to do that, because kids change their minds, and also that they see that they don't always get the feedback that they're hoping to get. So for me as a filmmaker, I had conversations with Avery and with Debbie about it, and we all decided together that this was different, that this was something that we started early on, and that we are telling a full story, and we're not like a magazine, or we're not like a news story that just comes in and just sort of tells this quick snapshot of where their lives are right now.
Mhm.
And it goes back to having a relationship with people, that that Avery understood the purpose of the film and the intent to get these stories out, and that I think she always just stayed kind of committed to the long-term goal of what we were doing. So she definitely, there were times where she didn't want to film, and she would take some breaks, but then she really, in her youthful way, stayed very committed to the project.
Well, I think her story is going to help a lot of other kids.
Yeah,
And I hope she knows that.
I know. And so powerful and philosophical. I mean, the stuff she says
Yeah.
at the end, I'm filming it with her, and I'm like, wow, like,
Yeah. I know.
who
She
gave
blew
you
me
these
away.
words?
Yes. So I hope she's given that credit. So anyway, let's move on to Jay. And it was very emotional for me to watch that story.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times it brought tears to my eyes. And the part where Mildred, Jay's girlfriend, was in the story, and there was a phone conversation between Jay's mom and Mildred, and then Jay got on the phone.
I know.
Could you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah. It was we decided it was a Sunday morning, and during the week I was talking to Bryce and said, we just decided to film like a casual Sunday morning with them. We said, how about we'll bring bagels over, we'll talk, and then we'll just kind of hang out with you and see what a typical Sunday is for you. Well, as you can imagine, when we got there, and Bryce said, this is just crazy what's happening right now, and we just started rolling, and that just transpired right before our eyes, and it was so painful. I mean, it was so painful for Jay and Bryce and for us, and it went on for a long time. There were several more conversations too that went on between Jay and Mildred, but that the one we put in the film was by far the most heart-wrenching.
Believe me, I know how it brought tears to my eyes.
I know, and it really gets to the heart of some of the issue, that one of the biggest issues that parents have to deal with and navigate with their kids in terms of disclosure. When and how is it appropriate to disclose that you are trans to a girlfriend, boyfriend, to a friend? And each parent and child makes that decision,
Yes,
independently, but it's and it has to do with lots of different circumstances, but it's it's a landmine that they have to navigate.
yeah. And were you in touch with Mildred's parents?
Just to the extent that we had permission to
Yeah.
film with Mildred, but
Okay.
no, we never did anything else.
No, but that's what I was asking, that you had permission from Mildred's parents.
Mm-hmm.
And did Mildred's parents know that Jay was trans?
Not at. Don't think they knew. I mean, I think they learned it in the same time that that we were filming it.
Cool.
And then we filmed. I think a little bit afterwards, after they, after she knew, after the mom knew.
Okay, cool. Uh, uh, Jay's mom said, I'd rather have a healthy son than a suicidal daughter. And to me, you know, having known a family that had a suicide, a transgender girl suicide, and they were a supportive family, you know, just meant so much. And I thought it was so important to get that line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And, you know, and because there was one interview that with Jay where he talked about it. He talked about how he had suicidal thoughts. I mean, unfortunately, as accepting as parents can be, and loving, it's that peer group that can put so much pressure on them, and so they are always so vulnerable.
yes.
Uh,
Yeah, I have seen that. In fact, a transgender teen girl had a group of friends, and the group of friends was so supportive, and they would say, "Oh, let's go out for pizza," and she would run up to her room and change her clothes and look like a boy because she was afraid to face the world.
yeah,
So what you say is so important.
yeah,
All right, can we move on to Lena?
yes.
So first, my first reaction was to Lena's grandmother.
Oh, yes.
She was so supportive, and I thought, how did she educate herself? How did she? So tell.
I
Can you
know.
tell?
She's amazing. And every time when we did a series of screenings before we did the final cut of the film, and everybody wrote on their sheets, more grandma.
Yes.
You know, everyone wanted more of her. And she is amazing. And I actually don't think she did anything proactively to teach herself anything about how to be. And I think what we just saw was her raw, natural reaction to just loving her grandkid. You know, and
Well,
as she says in the film, like, you know, she's not into having the tattoos and stuff. So, you
yeah.
know, she definitely has her boundaries and her opinions, but gender, it's just, you know, just nothing to really worry about.
You're my grandchild, and I love you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that really showed. So then Lena's boyfriend, Brian,
Hmm.
uh, when I first saw him, I thought, and she, unlike Jay, came out and said, I'm transgender, and he was so accepting. And then, could you tell me about the I'm sorry, Brian's transition from?
Yeah, that was also yeah, something that I didn't really expect, because you know, I thought, wow, this is a really accepting, embracing, you know, teenage boy.
That was my thought exactly.
Yeah, and I thought this is going to be a sweet love story. And lucky Lena. Well, you know, Lena didn't get to go unscathed as many, you know, trans teens do. Don't get to go unscathed. Brian had his own journey to
Yes.
he was going through, and I mean, what he said to Lena was that, you know, he wasn't sure of his own sexual orientation, and that was and he was too afraid, which is also really unfortunate, that he was really afraid to express and to express what he was really feeling about his own sexuality. And so he decided to be with Lena to kind of experiment.
And it was a safe
Yeah,
route.
yeah.
But unlike the four cast members, Brian was not comfortable and probably didn't have the support at home.
Right, right. Yes. So
Yeah.
he was, yeah. And so, and as a teenager, you know, he didn't know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
So this is what he turned to. And I personally, I saw him being very caring to her. So that was really, it was disturbing to me because I really felt like I saw genuine, you know, caring and warmth there.
And then Lena, who is the oldest member of the cast and is a beautiful young woman and wants to be a model. How was it dealing with her in that modeling mode?
Oh, well, it was kind of fun watching watching Lena do. I mean, she had photo shoots and she would do photo shoots with her friend, and she was very particular about how her hair looked and her makeup before we were filming. And she's just a real sparkly girl.
Mm-hmm.
And and she's just, I mean, that hair, and she's just gorgeous. And while she has a lot of confidence, you know, I still wish she would have a little bit more confidence to know, to really believe and know that she can make this. Because I think that, you know, with her, you know, all the things that she's been through in her life, I think she's very vulnerable and very sensitive to getting turned down. And you know, and most kids are, but you put on top of that the journey that she's had with you know, with being transgender. I think that's you know, it kind of complicates it even more.
I have a question that I want to ask about all of the 4 cast members. How are they dealing with school?
Oh, like, do you mean right now, or?
Oh, I know now it's COVID, but I mean, are they treated well in school? Do they have problems in school?
Well, let's see. Avery is homeschooled because she had problems in school.
Okay.
Phoenix, at the time that Phoenix desists is when Phoenix goes back to public school, had been doing homeschooling. So, you know, whether or not that had an influence on his decision, you know, is, you know, up for grabs. But it was when he went back to school and, you know, had to choose a bathroom to go to use that he desists. Lena had definitely had issues at school. She when she was a freshman had to fight the school on the use of the appropriate bathroom, and then really got into some bullying. Was bullied, not so much by the students but by the teachers.
Oh.
Yeah, like you know, using the wrong pronouns, refusing to use the right pronouns, and name, and sort of using dead name, and using, you know, her dead name and stuff. So it was not a great experience for her. And toward I think her senior year, she did mostly like remote school, and Jay had constant issues at school. So yeah, the school thing is a real problem.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, because they had such great home experiences, and I was wondering. But
yeah, and it was, and you know, this many times the school didn't want us to go in, but we also didn't want to film, because then that would have been another thing that would have been like, why are you being filmed? And you know,
yes.
Oh, you are a specimen. And we
Yep.
definitely didn't want to give that, you know.
I think that was the right decision. I support that. So So let me ask you, who do you think should see this film?
Mm. Well, I think first and foremost, I think that families watching together would be great. I would love for families to see, and of course, families who might be having their own journey similar to these. So I think it could be really helpful. I also I think families who just in general, so that they have a better understanding of the family next door who might be going through this journey. So I think that that's important. I also think it's really important for, when you want to change hearts and minds through a documentary, you have to be realistic, and there definitely a segment of the population that will have no interest and be would not learn anything from this film. But I do think that people, cisgender people who might not have had any, interaction with anyone that in terms of them knowing that they're transgender, could really learn a lot from the film. And it's kind of in the nuanced stuff, like the importance of the kind of like the challenges of disclosure, the importance of not dead naming, the importance of using the right pronouns, like things that I think that well-meaning people just might not be aware of. And so I think that this film can help people who want to be supportive and affirming.
Great. Well, Sharon, thank you so much. The Quad S membership are going to love your film, and I'm sure they will utilize it beyond our meeting. So
that's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your interest. I really appreciate it.